Hello everybody and welcome back to Send Searchlights. It's great to be back. For those of you returning from a summer break, we hope you are well rested and wish you all the very best for the new academic year ahead of us. I'm Polly, and as you regulars know, we are normally joined by Emma Dibden as well. Emma is on her way, unfortunately struggling with those technical issues this morning, but hopefully she will be with us in just a couple of minutes. As always started, just a quick reminder for housekeeping, please do stay on mute. If you need any clarification on today's topics, please put your questions in the chat box so we don't miss it. And as always, for any future webinars, any questions, please do keep those coming. We're really interested in your questions, and they can be submitted using the registration form, which will be sent to you after the webinar, along with the recording of this one, and also any links to resources that we might mention. So on to today, and we are delighted to be joined by Beccie Hawes, who is CEO of Cadmus Inclusive. Beccie has worked in all aspects of special educational needs and has an extensive experience as a SENCO, inclusion manager, lead local authority advisory SEND teacher, and head of a SEND specific support service. Beccie remains very hands-on in the classroom and is passionate about being at the chalk face to support teachers and children in order to practice what she preaches. She is not only the author of many educational books and blogs, but has also developed a number of educational resources to support learners with special educational needs. Her latest book, Unlocking Inclusion for SEN Learners, has just been published, which is very exciting. Beccie strives to support schools to think differently to improve classroom teaching, to ensure that every pupil has the chance to shine. So on to meeting Beccie. Today we have collated a number of questions from colleagues from Nigeria and the UAE about the best ways to develop and promote inclusive environments where all learners can thrive. So our first question to you, Beccie, is how can we promote an inclusive culture so that no child is left behind?
Well, a big good morning to everyone. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Polly. And that is a great first question to get our teeth into this morning. So I think when I think about promoting this inclusive culture, I want you to imagine that we've got a difficult curb on a roadside that we're all trying to get up and get over. It's going to be especially difficult if I'm a person pushing a pushchair, because that high curb is going to make it really challenging for me to get me and my pushchair up those steps. But if I put in a dropped curb or maybe a ramp, not only does it solve the problem for the person with the pushchair, it solves the problem for everybody, because suddenly everything's that little bit easier for everybody, regardless of their starting point and regardless of what they need. So if we apply that to our classroom, it's about adopting a vital for some but valuable for all culture. So in our classrooms, if you think that dropped curb, it's vital for the person with a pushchair, it's vital for a wheelchair user, but it is really valuable for everyone. And I always take the mantra that what is really helpful for our children and young people with special educational needs and or disabilities is going to help everybody and make a really positive difference to all. So it starts with our ethos. Think about providing support that's just going to be routine, that all of your students can access day in and day out. So actually, to all of the children and young people in your classroom, the extra stuff that's vital for some, actually, there's nothing exciting. It's what we ordinarily do. It's what's available. Now, one way to do that, one quick tip, is to think about maybe having an enable table in your classroom or a help yourself shelf. This is an area in your room, maybe a table, maybe a shelf, full of really useful stuff that your children and young people can get up, go and get whenever they are stuck. So you might have things there like visual supports to help with the vocabulary of your lesson, a writing frame that will structure the student's response, pencil grips, adapted scissors, the task instructions recorded on a voice recording device. And the idea is that they're not just for that one child who you really know needs it, they're for everyone. So the minute anybody in your class is stuck, they can own that being stuck, get up, be independent, get what they need, come back and use it, rather than this pair of special scissors is just for you. This writing frame is just for you. And the other thing to consider there, last sentence from me on this one, is about peer awareness, so that we recognise and accept that actually everybody in this classroom has their own strengths, their own gifts, their own talents, and their own wonder and awe that they bring to the world. And actually, we've all got our own needs. And me as the teacher, I've got mine too. I learn really well in this way, and this doesn't work for me. And if we share that and we value that in our culture, then we're going to naturally be inclusive without making it a huge, big song and dance.
I love that. Thank you, Becky. And apologies to everybody for my issues joining the call. One of the things that stood out from what you just said then, Becky, was that ordinarily available for everybody. And I think it's really powerful for our colleagues in schools to be able to hear. And it's a fascinating start to our conversation with a sort of recognition of the strengths and challenges that exist across the classroom, and that everybody should be able to access things that they need when they need them. If we focus, I guess, on that sort of strengths and challenges piece just for a moment, for the benefit of a kind of learner experiencing some of those kind of specific barriers, would you suggest it's better to include them within the typical or ordinary learning environment, or to support them through more targeted withdrawal interventions?
And I think that is a brilliant question, Emma, and it's the one that everybody asks me, because often when we've got a child who, for whatever reason, is struggling somewhere, our natural instinct as good human beings is to throw everything at them. You have all of this, you have all of this, and let me take you away and fix this problem and get you back into class as quickly as we can. But actually, sometimes inclusion or exclusion can be detrimental. So we really got to think about this on a case-by-case basis. So the very first thing I say to colleagues when they come to me, I've got this pupil, who help? I will say to them, right, let's just have a think about your usual, what is ordinarily available, adaptive classroom teaching. Does that, and can you match that to what this particular individual child needs? Because sometimes we've just got to tweak up what we've got on offer in the classroom, and that's our starting point. So that's about providing the right scaffold so that the learners in your classroom can reach for those ambitious learning objectives and outcomes, as opposed to us differentiating down. So I always think, let's scaffold up rather than bring it down. And the best way to do that is to truly understand the needs and strengths of your pupils and how they present in the classroom. What's it like for them? So, for example, for some of our learners, they might have the most incredible scientific knowledge and be able to tell you all about condensation and impervious rocks and so on. And they might do the most incredible science investigations, but their challenge is that I have the knowledge, the skills and the understanding, but I'm going to really struggle to write that down in a written format. So they should still be in the classroom accessing that, because the knowledge, the skills and the understanding is there, just like the rest of their peers. But maybe I've just got to offer some alternative for you, such as a voice recording device. You can record it, I'll listen to it. Maybe you could do yours as a diagram or an illustration or as a flowchart. Now, when a learner's not in the classroom, so we've got to balance this out, and they're having evidence-based, well-founded intervention, what are they actually missing out on? Well, sometimes that's the support of a qualified teacher. They're missing out on their peer support. They're missing out on the additional scaffolds as part of that adaptive teaching approach. And they're actually missing out on all of the wonderful incidental learning that goes on in a classroom. Because often, being in a classroom is a social thing, and it's where we learn to be good human beings amongst our peers. Now, we've got to then balance, are we going to give this child something even better than that if we take them out for a targeted withdrawal intervention? Or are they missing out actually on something, and they're right to that broad and balanced curriculum delivered by a qualified teacher? So with that said, for some learners, we then do have to go, do you know what? You do need that intervention, and I do need to accelerate your progress so you can get back into the classroom and access as much adaptive teaching as possible. So there's some key questions we've got to consider. What will the learner benefit from? How will they learn, and how is that going to get back into the classroom and be applied? Who's actually going to deliver this? How are we going to quality assure that it is really excellent provision? And what classroom and learning opportunities might they miss out on if they're with us doing intervention? How do I make up for that? And how will that class teacher and that intervention leader liaise with each other to make sure that learning is shared and they don't happen in two isolated places. And actually is what we're doing. Could we do that in the classroom? So I think the big message there about these withdrawal interventions is they should complement adaptive classroom teaching. If you like, it's the icing on the cake for the learner. They shouldn't be replacing it.
Thank you so much, Beccie. Some really great insights and some questions for our colleagues to consider within their own settings. We now move on to our illuminations, where each month we try and provide some suggestions that might be helpful to our listeners on their journey to maximising their support offer to students. So some little bite-sized chunks that you can take away and hopefully put into practice in your settings. And today I've got the privilege of handing that over to Beccie. She's got lots of work to do today. And Beccie is going to guide us through some useful next steps. So back over to you, Beccie.
Yes, I think for me, it's following on from today's theme, which you can probably tell, so I've got all handsy, I'm really passionate about. I think these are, for me, my top 3 most simple tips for supporting pupils to access inclusive adaptive classroom teaching. And I've tried to think of things that I keep repeating myself about, not only to the brilliant student trainee teachers that I encounter, but also those very, very experienced classroom veterans, I like to call them, who've been there for a long time. So this is about eliminating taking guesswork for learners, because I think our children need to feel safe, secure, and that they belong in the environment. And if you've got those 3 things, you're going to get learning because we're in a good place. Now, I know if I'm not sure what's happening, I get really anxious. So the very first thing for me is I think visually for all of the children, because if you like, we've got like international sign language, haven't we? If I do that, you know I want a drink. If I do that, you know, or that now, I need you on the phone. So think visual, wherever you can add visual support. Now, this might be pictures that support key important vocabulary. It could be Makaton signs if you use that, or if not, just natural gestures. It could be that you use those for your instructions. You might have a lanyard with pictures on that you can show students so that they can really understand what you're saying, but they might also have lanyards to show you so that they can show as opposed to tell if the vocabulary isn't as developed as we would like right now. And we've got examples of those sorts of things on our website. But I think you take that guesswork away. The next thing you can do here now is about lightening the load. We all get very overwhelmed often when lots and lots of information is presented to us. And we've all got different levels of overwhelm. And on some days, if I'm a bit tired and a bit grotty, it's very small. And on other days, I can wake up and you know what? I want to take the world on today and let's go for it. So it's about lightening the cognitive load so that pupils can focus on the content of your lesson. So for example, you might have a really good visual timeline that shows people what they're doing now, when that activity stops, and what they're going to be doing next. And you can see the process of the task visually, so you haven't got to remember it. It's like long division. We often do dividing with a bus stop, those line methods, and it's a big, long process to remember. If I can support children with, here's a visual for that process, you don't worry about that, you follow the visual, you concentrate on the learning. And there's a brilliant fun board, it's called, it stands for fun, first until next, and that's available from the Autism Level Up website. You could also, another simple idea is use a voice recording device. So that's for task completion. If I give the whole class the instructions, I could quickly use my voice recording device to record me giving the instructions and hand it to that one pupil that needs it so that they can replay it as many times as they need to complete the task. So again, I've got something holding the information for them as opposed to them trying to hold everything. And then my final thing for me comes back to that safe, secure and belonging need for our classroom. It's remembering that you as the grown-up, you set the tone in the classroom. So it's about celebrating progress and success, no matter how teeny tiny that might be, and keeping your classroom really positive, upbeat and affirmative. A can-do culture where pupils feel safe and secure to take learning risks is absolutely essential, because I think learning's like really risky. What if I can't do it? What if I fail? And here's a class of children all looking at me while I'm doing it. It's very public, isn't it? So it's about being positive with very specific praise and fun against the backdrop where pupils see themselves as active and valued partners in their own learning. That's what we're after, really. But on the flip side of that, just remember that you're human too. So pupils don't want Mary Poppins and this perfect grown-up. They really want someone real that they can connect with.
Thank you so much, Beccie, and thank you so much for giving up your time and joining us today when I know you've got a very busy schedule with your schools. It's been great to have you with us to share your wisdom and expertise. And as always, thank you to our listeners for joining us today. Next month we are marking Dyslexia Awareness Week, so please do join us for that. I'm just going to pop our QR code up on the screen for you to submit any feedback from our sessions. We continue to invite you to keep your questions coming, as we will be revisiting these in our November Send Searchlights. So if you could just spare a few minutes to offer your feedback, we would appreciate that. Now we have had a question come through on our Q&A about career pathways for those students who have got really good cognitive abilities but low reading and spelling ages. So I don't know if that is a question for now, something to mull over for our next session, or whether that is something that you've got any thoughts on, Beccie or Emma.
I think it's something I'll certainly jump in with, if you don't mind, just very briefly. I think now we're working in a world where actually neurodivergence and all kinds of minds and skills and talents are being recognised and celebrated. And we're getting lots of corporate businesses actually coming to us to say, we've got staff who are incredible at their job, they've got all these skills, but it's their written literacy skills that are causing a problem in terms of how they access the job. Well, I think what they're prepared to do now is they're looking at the use of technology, scanning pens, voice-to-text software, and actually valuing those as valuable differences for that company. So it isn't the barrier that maybe we used to think it was. I think that the tide's certainly turning as part of this neuro-affirming approach that's really going on. And that's only just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, I think, the more we're shouting that message out there.
I agree, and just to add on to that, I think we all understand the exciting role that assistive and alternative technology plays, and for some young people that might be in terms of supporting communication. In other instances that might be to support some of their literacy skills as they're working through, and Beccie gave us a great example of that earlier, didn't you, in terms of the young scientist in the classroom has a phenomenal scientific knowledge but may not necessarily be as strong as recording their learning as they might like. So some of that technology could assist there. So I think it's an opportunity for them to pursue any pathway they dream, and it's ours to try and facilitate that for them through the resourcing that we can, and the scaffolding that you mentioned, Beccie.
Yeah, and I made the case beautifully to a tiny human age 7 who said to me, my mum said, if my spelling doesn't improve, I'm not going to be able to do anything. And I said to him, look at what I'm doing. I said, well, what am I doing right now? He said, well, you're typing on your laptop. And I went, can you see the red wiggly lines? Yeah, they're all my spelling mistakes, which the laptop's going to collect for me. I said, they're going to correct the whole thing. So please don't you worry. Keep working on it. You will improve from where you are right now. But the laptop's helping me, and I've got quite a good job, mate. And he thought, you know, yeah, okay. It's about that story of hope, isn't it? You can be anything you want to be because the world is evolving to support you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Emma, and thank you, Beccie. We hope the new term has started well for you all out there. And we do look forward to seeing you again on the 8th of October. But for now, we wish you a good rest of the day or rest of the evening, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for joining us.